Peace. This is A and B, African man born on the Culture Speaks, a true hip hop podcast for those who live it. Let's get into it.
I am hip-hop culture, predator the vultures. Rappers getting high, spitting lines, I be sober. Never need an entourage, Pando who holds us down when I come around. Massachusetts soul child, say me in your masu. Knowledge will surpass you. Silly rap crews, walking shady as they move. I am the god man, I be living in the proof. I be teaching all the youth on the elements they use. Turn the television off, all the government is plotting on our sons, and we disrespect our daughters as we living in the slums, and we stay.
Peace. This is A and B, African man born on the Culture Speaks, a true hip hop podcast for those who live it.
Make decisions like a grown man and plan my future up for the unity to take it over. Gather everyone. This is who I am as I'm representing hip hop. I will take a stand while I'm representing hip hop. Gotta be my best as I'm representing hip hop. God in the flesh as I'm representing hip hop. This is who I am as I'm representing hip hop. I will take a stand while I'm representing hip hop. Gotta be my best as I'm representing hip hop. God in the flesh as I'm representing hip hop.
Peace. Welcome to the Culture Speaks, episode 4. All right. So this is Dr. A and B on the Culture Speaks, a true hip hop podcast for those who live it. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. All right. So this particular podcast, we're going to get into culture vultures. Culture vultures are something that, let's say culture vultures are people that infiltrate into somebody else's way of life, change it up for their fitting, change it up for their wants, needs, or whatever they want to practice with it. Culture vultures are usually people that represent theft, the music industry. Culture vultures. Why? Because the music industry was started in 1917. I forgot the man's name, but he pretty much was recording sounds with a tape recorder, and he pretty much said, well, yeah, we're going to profit off of this by patenting. For those who don't know what patenting is pretty much copyright, trademark, taking things and putting a stamp on it where they own it by way of legal paperwork. Culture vultures use legalities to succeed in stealing, while they'll say that you stole from them if you use their material that they own, because they own it based on paperwork. They own it based on government. They own it based on what they put themselves in the position to be as the owner. It's just like home ownership. You don't really own a home. The bank owns the home. And once you pay off the bank, the government owns the home. So therefore, you just paid for the home for the government to take over as the owner while you sit as the position of owner. What does that mean? You pay property tax even when you're paying a mortgage. After 30 years you pay the mortgage, you're still paying property tax. You still owe the government property taxes every 3 months or every year, right? So there's no such thing as home ownership unless you are part of the government or the bank. And banks use life insurance, whole life insurance. That's why you see the FDIC. That's life insurance. Why? Because life insurance has more money than banks. But that's a totally different podcast. I can get to that on Random Thoughts. All right? So, with that being said, we're going to get into culture vultures. I'll give you a brief historical reference on culture vultures. Christopher Columbus, otherwise known as Christopher Columbo, culture vulture. Matter of fact, he's not even a culture vulture. He's actually a culture exterminator. He's a person that went into the West Indies and murdered people because they wouldn't accept Catholicism and Christianity. You can look this up, which is why they decided to change the actual holiday to Indigenous People Day. In Massachusetts, I don't know about other states, but in Massachusetts, it's called Indigenous Peoples Day. It's not called Columbus Day anymore. It's been like that probably for like the last 5 years. You know what I'm saying? It's called Indigenous People Day. All right. It still doesn't change the facts that you're still celebrating it on a day, right, which is October 12th, You're celebrating on Columbus Day, so you didn't really change the day. Indigenous people didn't celebrate days and holidays like that. They did rituals and ceremonies. All right. So when you're talking about culture, you still haven't provided those people with their land back. You still haven't given them anything that you took from them. You pretty much allowed them to live in your system. That's a culture vulture. You see what I'm saying? Culture vultures are people like the United States of America. Culture vulture. You know what I mean? You come into a land, you kill the indigenous off, you take things, you steal things, steal land, and then you tell the indigenous people that they need to pretty much get down or lay down. You see what I'm saying? It's all a part of their system of control. Culture vultures want to take to control. So when you put that into the music industry does the same thing. The movie industry does the same thing. There's a movie called Slumdog Millionaire that came out probably like the end of the early 2000s or in the mid 2000s, early part of it. You know what I mean? This movie was done in India. And what happened was the movie the movie is about a young man who was playing Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And pretty much he got all the answers right. The show, they was convinced that he was cheating, but he knew all the answers because all the answers had to do with his life. How his mother got killed. He knew about the $100 bill. He came into contact with certain individuals that showed him certain things. And these questions happened, of course it's a movie. These questions happened to come up while he was doing the show, and he answered the questions right. And then they suspected him of cheating. When then they found out that he really wasn't cheating, he was able to finish the show and become a millionaire, right? And he was in love with this girl. And this girl that he grew up with, his brother pretty much shitted on him to take that girl and sell her into slavery by a crime boss, right? Eventually, she was able to escape by way of his brother's sacrifice to you know what I mean? And then they ended up being together, love story shit. Now, the reason why I mentioned that movie as Culture Vultures is because the directors and everything went in there, paid the people very minimal, filmed all over the place, did all these things, and then what ends up happening, he didn't give them the proper payments, proper contracts, and a lot of these people got screwed out of what was owed to them by way of that movie being one of the most successful movies of that year. Now, mind you, this is something that they've been doing for eons. Taraji P. Henson talked about it on a podcast, where she said that she doesn't get paid. She doesn't get paid the way European and white artists do. Now, mind you, we're in a day and time where a lot of white people are sensitive when they say their name, that they're racist and all these other things. But let's look at the facts. All right? When we're talking about white folks, when we're talking about the Caucasian race of people that are in so-called power, we're talking about those that are in like political, financial power that have the ability to pay out certain things for certain people that do a job, and they don't want to do that. If you look that straight out of Compton, you seen the executive who pretty much was running Priority Records at the time. He didn't want to pay Ice Cube the money that he owed him. So what did he do? He had to get his office smashed, beat down, broken up his stuff, just so he can pay him the money that he owed. They do it at jobs, but there's structures at jobs where you can't really do the whole grimy shit. But guess what? They're going to try to do that stuff. Culture vultures, man. So when you look at the music industry and the culture vultures, you look at everything that you see. What you see on the TV, the videos, and the flashing of the money, all of these are mascots for the culture vultures. They're not the ones that's paid. You represent the ones that's actually getting paid by the images that they want you to put out, by the music that they want you to put out. Culture vultures are the record executives. Culture vultures are the lawyers and accountants that run the music industry. So they say they run hip-hop. Nobody runs hip-hop. Hip-hop is a culture, and the whole culture is not being represented in the music industry. So how could you run the culture? I'm going to get into that on the next segment of this. So I'll see you on the next segment. Peace.